hope you guys are ready for some more information. I know it can be hard at these conferences to sometimes take everything in, so just know that you have access to these slides. You can always go back and you can talk to me, email me, whatever you guys want to do. Okay, so this is about harvesting, because on my farm, at least, we spend, we harvest 3 times a week, usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that's based on our different markets that we're going to. We're also probably harvesting a little bit on Tuesdays and Thursdays just because we might need a little extra or whatever. But we spend, 3 of us are full-time people, so me, myself, and I. Me, my husband, and my employee. We're out in the field harvesting in the summer from 6 a.m. to noon. So that's 6 hours for 3 people. It's 18 hours a day that we are harvesting, okay? And what is that? A bunch of hours every week, right? It's almost like, it's like a full-time job for the week. More than 40 hours. So it's important that we're doing harvest in an efficient way. We want to be making sure that every cut we're making is a good sellable flower, and that we're doing it as quickly as we can, getting those back into the cooler as quickly as we can so that those flowers are as quality as they can be. We'll talk a little bit about post-harvest handling, although that's not really my forte. I mainly, you'll see what I do, and then pricing, which I do have some thoughts about, and we can chat about. Please forgive me. I almost never talk this much ever, so I am gonna. My voice is a little bit ragged already. All right, so just some basics on our harvesting. What's the most important thing about harvesting, and what do we need to keep track of? Is there anything that comes to y'all's mind about what's super important to for when we're going to start to harvest? Timing. Okay, great. So meaning
sunflowers you harvest before they open, and some you have to wait until they open.
Yeah. So harvest stage, like what do we, on a sunflower? What I'm looking for is 1 or 2 petals to come off of the face of the disc, right? Now that's time to harvest those. Or, if most of the petals are at like a perpendicular angle, right? So I'm not going to talk a lot about harvest stage today, but those are really important things. If you look at my master plan spreadsheet, you can see all the harvest stages that I've figured out for most of the flowers there. So timing is important as far as what stage we're harvesting at, and also what time of day are we harvesting. So that's why we're doing from 6 a.m. until noon, because those are the cooler hours of the day. And we're going to wait until, or we're going to do our most sensitive flowers first. So maybe our herbs, maybe something that's wilty. We're going to do those in the early morning, get those into the cooler. And then we might wait till later to do sunflowers and zinnias and dahlias, things that, they're going to be okay. What else is important when we're thinking about like our tools and our materials and that kind of thing? Clean tools and sharp tools, right? Clean and sharp is super important. I'm going to show you a little bit about our little wash station. So this is a little box that I made, and it has little buckets in it. And this is our little wash tub, rinse and sanitizing for our snips. So, we just have a regular dish soap in there and then rinse, and then I just put like a drop of bleach in this sanitizing bucket. So that's really easy. All of us go through in the morning and we wash and rinse our snips. And then this thing right here is a diamond hone, which is a nice, easy way to just hone up your snips before you're going to go out in the field. And we do that usually every day before we're going to harvest. So it's really important that your snips are clean and sharp. We also use this thing, which is a work sharp sharpener, and it's really easy, if you don't want to have a grinder around, and grinders are a little bit too heavy duty for your snips anyway. So this thing has little belts of different grit sizes on it, and that can be really nice for just sharpening things up, especially over the winter. So this is our little corner that we use to organize our stuff. So this is the place where we keep our harvest sheets and other, information on clipboards. We've got all of our snips up there, and our hories and our little scythes and scissors and rubber bands. And then we have our wash station, and then we have some spray bottles here for different things. But mainly for putting solution into our buckets when they come back to the cooler. This is our very simple bucket washing station. So the other thing that needs to be super, super clean are your buckets. You have got to have clean buckets. Like, you should be wanting to drink the water out of those buckets. If you were out in the field, you were dying of thirst, you got a bucket of water there, you're gonna drink the bucket, that water out of that bucket, okay? So we just have a sprayer. We use a biodegradable soap so it can go into our French drain and out into the farm. And we use that's like the head of a toilet scrubber. So that can work really well for washing your buckets. There's amazing bucket washing machines out there if you've got $12,000 lying around. But we still do all of ours by hand. And then we, stack them up and let them dry, and then they sit over there on the pallets. Who does anybody bunch their flowers in the field? You do? Occasionally? Okay. So I really like bunching flowers in the field because it helps me count how many flowers that I'm getting out of a particular spot. So the rubber bands I use for that are very particularly number 19 size, which is thin and long. So I can put it up the stem, stretch it, and then put up another stem, right? It's nice, makes a really tight bundle of flowers so they're not like getting bumped around and messed up in the bucket. Other useful sizes are listed there for sunflowers or like bulkier stems. You might want something a little bit thicker. Also, I've found I dry my flowers a lot, so I'll hang them from the rubber bands. If you don't have a thicker rubber band, they tend to disintegrate pretty quickly, and so all those flowers that you dried will fall off of your rack or your string or whatever. So you want a thicker one for that. All right, so then for harvesting is really, because we're spending so much time harvesting, it's really important that we are treating our bodies well and that we are doing things that make sense and aren't hurting us, okay? So number one for me is to avoid lifting water. You don't want to be, you put your bucket on the ground and then you're gonna pick up that bucket and like walk over to the field and then put your flowers in it. Or you're gonna, even like putting the water in the bucket on the ground and then lifting it up onto a cart. Just think about things like that. You want to be moving water as little as possible. Unless it's on wheels, you're not moving water. So use a hose, use wheels, and then if you don't have a way to do that, having a couple of people to hand off a bucket too, so that not everybody is lifting the bucket and that you're moving it, like a fire line. Everything on wheels whenever possible. And in my barn, we're very fortunate to have a concrete floor, and so all of my tables in there are on wheels, and I can move things around, and they can be, in different configurations. My ultimate dream is to have a roller conveyor, which I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but it's super cool. It's like these rollers, and you can slide something like really far on one. So I want one that goes from the door into the cooler. That would be amazing, around the corner. And then when you're harvesting, what I like to do is create a harvest rhythm. So I'm just, you'll see in the video that's coming up, I'm gonna cut the flower, and I've got a good rhythm going. It's like, it's not super fast, but it has a rhythm so that you can keep on time and that we're breathing at the same time. So we're not in a hurry when we're harvesting. We're just wanting to do things really effectively. And so we want to do things, and effectively means we're doing it so that it's quality, and we're doing it so that we are making the most of our time, not necessarily doing it as fast as possible, but doing it as fast and with as much quality as possible. So that's what effective means to me if I use that word a lot. Practice good posture and core stabilization. And stretching's so important. So, for me, there's actually like a really cool program that I just learned about, and it's called labor movement. And it's by a young person out east somewhere, but she's consulting with farmers about how to be ergonomic in the way that we're moving around on our farms. So when we're harvesting, like good core stabilization and posture, right? So she talks about when we're bending over like this and we're harvesting, your head on top of your body weighs 6 pounds, but when you're bent over like this, the weight of your head actually, the strain on your back actually increases, so your head can weigh about 60 pounds when you're in this position. Okay, and then so when you're pulling back on your head like that, you're putting a lot of strain on your lower back. So what she recommends is really cool to hear this podcast. This is on Growing for Market podcast. So she was bent, if you're bent over like this and you're harvesting, then you're gonna bend your knees so that your head is more on top of your spine, and then you use your legs to stand up, okay? So like it's really simple things like that where we wanna be, if you can do a few sit-ups once a week or so, or like can keep that going, maybe you do a little bit of extra strength training in the winter time to make sure that you've got a good core stabilization so that we can do this, so that we can bend over and we can have a really good, strong back that's not gonna get under strain from a lot of repetitive use. And then stretching in the evening, if you can make that happen for yourself, it doesn't have to be long. It can just be 5 minutes. It can be in the morning when you get up and you just do a couple of these while you're waiting for your coffee to brew, It's really helpful. Because oftentimes when we're harvesting and a lot of farm work, we're like office workers. We're just doing this all day, Like we think we're not office workers, but we end up just like this anyway. So we have a lot of actually tightness on the front of our body right here. And so a lot of, if you ever do any yoga poses that are like heart openers or doing this, we just want to like counteract that perpetual strain on the front of our bodies a lot and make sure that we're making our backs and our cores really nice and healthy. So we're doing, this year we cut over 125,000 stems. So that's 125,000 stems that we're bending over, times that we're bending over and standing up again. Measuring with your body, so if you need a particular stem length, just like know how far is that on my body. So for me, if I've got my snips in my hand, from the tip of my snips to my elbow is a long enough stem that I can use it for a good mixed bouquet. If I need something longer, I'm gonna measure, if I can, I'm gonna measure up to my shoulder. That's just an easy way of thinking about it. And, so then that means that if I'm measuring up to here, I'm like, that's not a long enough stem. I'm not going to be able to use that in what I need it for. Now, if I want to, and I'm going to a market and I'm going to make little tiny jars of something, I can go out there and I can get those extra stems that are laying around, or I can reserve them. Okay, using the correct rubber banding technique if you bunch. This is my favorite thing because it's so important to me. Does anybody have a rubber band? I actually don't have a rubber band right now, which is strange, and like I feel naked without one. Just like any kind of rubber band would be so helpful. That's fine, yeah. Thank you. Oh, perfect. Okay, so if you're bunching, and I do recommend bunching, depends on what your market is, but it can be much easier to take bunches out of the bucket, easier to market them in bunches, and then, I don't know, for me it's about the counting. So we're not gonna do a ponytail when we bunch. We're not gonna do this. Who knows how we do it? Oh, do you want to show us?
Well, I need.
Okay, here's some beautiful, beautiful stems of scabiosa. Why don't you show us?
You grab one stalk. Tell me if I do it.
You're doing it.
But put it on one, wrap it around and around, and bring it back.
Yeah.
To another one, and try not to bend it and have to cut the flower. I do it all the time.
Yeah. Beautiful. Perfect.
So
yeah.
nice when you have to add a stem or something else.
Yeah.
It's easier to undo it.
So, and then, so you can take that off the bottom and just let it go. Yeah. Boom, your bunch is loose. So I do it a little bit differently. I'll put it up a little high, and then we're getting pressure, we're wrapping it tight, and then I wrap it all the way down to the bottom. So then I don't have to bend anything. And then you also have like a really nice bundle in the bucket. Hopefully these aren't gonna get stuck to another, stem or anything. So if you take nothing away from this conference, please take away the rubber band technique, because it is super, super helpful and great. So can I hand this back to you? These are so nice. These are like those scoop scabiosa, so pretty.
I have just a Dakota. So when I'm transporting flowers to a florist or to the farmer's market, I have limited space.
Yeah.
I've gotten really good at using my space. If I bunch all my flowers up, I can get 10 times as many in a bucket than I can otherwise.
Yes.
If they're loose, they're all over. So I banned everything.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
So bunching, she's saying it gets her a lot more bunches in a bucket, which is great because space is usually at a premium on our farms, especially in your cooler. So great. And then one thing that's important for me is having a goal for the time it takes me to harvest a bunch. For me, that goal is 1 minute. And I'll show you how I get there in a video. And generally, my staff are slower than me. Sad tear. But but I do try and encourage them to be a little bit quicker. And just the way that we do that is just by having a standardized method for the way that we cut the flower every single time. And it can be different when you have netting in place or you've got a really wily kind of flower. Different things happen and sometimes things take longer to harvest. But having a goal is good. Oh, this is a little bit extra, but single piece flow is a concept in manufacturing. Single piece flow is the idea that instead of taking this thing and we're going to do one process to it all at once, right here, to all of these things, and then we're going to go do another process to all of them all at once. And now they're ready. Instead, we take this and we say, okay, I'm going to do this process. Let's start over here. I'm going to do this process and then this process, and that's done. This process and then this process, and that's done. This is actually faster. So the reason I'm talking about that is that it drives me insane to see people out in their field cutting their stems and not stripping them, and then sitting down on the ground and stripping the stems one at a time. If you do this, I forgive you. But the thing is that we're going to cut our stem. We're going to cut our stem, strip it, put it in our hand. Cut our stem, strip it, put it in our hand. Everyone gets the same treatment over time, and then we're going to bunch those in the field. And we're not going to and the reason is that every piece is sitting and waiting for the other pieces to get done, and we don't want to do that. Can you go ahead, Christine?
Helen, I was just going to, have you read Ben Hartman's
Oh, yes.
Farm? So if you want a really nice description of that process, read the book The Lean Farm by Ben Hartman. It changed how I picked tomatoes for my research program.
Yeah. Yeah, so and I have that book on the resources for this slide, I think. So it's a fantastic book, and in fact, harvesting on a schedule was the last point on this slide. But in fact, there's the Lean Farm. This is Ben Hartman, The Lean Farm, fantastic book. He also has a really great book on vegetable farming as well, The Lean Farming Guide to Growing Vegetables, I think. So single piece flow, I was going to show you this video, but I'm just not going to because I basically just did it for you there. So the idea is basically that, and think about this with flowers, like if you're cutting and then holding those stems in your hand, you want to get those bunched and in water as quickly as possible, right? So when if we're just cutting and not stripping, then it actually takes longer to get the whole bunch done and into water. It really does. If you want to, you can go back and watch this video, but I'm not going to do it right now. Okay. I am going to show you this video, which is of me harvesting some Rudbeckia. I'm going to sort of talk you through what I'm doing, and you can see how I'm getting to 10 stems in 1 minute. Okay, so I'm going to grab the flower that I want by the head underneath. I'm cutting nice and deep down in there. And then I'm stripping. So I'm cutting, stripping, and then pointing the flowers away from me like that in my hand. Stripping, grabbing the flower I want. This one, go ahead. And facing that away from me. Some people on my crew use their right hand to hold the flowers instead. And then I think this one's our last one. One more. Then I'm going to grab my rubber band, which is around my wrist. I'm tapping the stems on my leg to get them even so that they're not, you know, at different heights in the bunch. And then I'm wrapping, and sliding around the end. And I do put my flowers on the ground. Oops. I do put my flowers in bunches on the ground, and then so I'll be walking down the row, and I'm cutting. I've got one bunch, you know, I've put the bunches behind me. I'll go up to like 5 bunches, and then I'm going to come back and gather the bunches off the ground and put them into our buckets in the truck. So just another view of me. Oops, there's our truck. Let's see if I can. There we go. Okay, so then I'm just another view of me cutting. So you can see the most important thing, what I think, is deciding what flower you're going to cut, right? So I'm deciding right now. When I'm stripping that last stem, I'm deciding which one I'm going for next. I'm stripping. I'm not even looking at that one I just cut. Not looking at it anymore. I'm deciding what's the next one that I'm going to. I decided. And I'm looking for the next one. Cutting. Looking for the next one, because eventually the stripping is just like an automatic habit. You're not thinking about doing that. You're just looking for the next stem that you're going to cut. Aren't those pretty? God, that was a good year for Rudbeckia. Really nice.
And the foliage that you're stripping just turns into mulch on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't worry about cleaning that up. I'm going to show you one more time the rubber band technique, I think. Because you got to get this rubber band technique. So down the one stem, all the way to your hand, then wrap around the outside, and flip it over one end. The end. Okay. And then this is our truck. This was pretty recent. So we just have, this is like the cheapest truck that I could ever find. It's awesome. It's a Toyota. We can like find, there's people that work on them. You know, it's great. Whatever you got that can be a little vehicle. It can be a cart that you pull around. A donkey can pull it around. I don't care who pulls it around. But something on wheels that you can put your buckets on. And then we just made a little shade structure out of PVC and put shade cloth on it so that when we're out in the field and we've got stuff in our buckets, the flowers aren't sitting out in the sun while we're harvesting more flowers. So this makes it nice and efficient. I'm getting a whole truckload of flowers back to the cooler at one time without them having too much stress on them in the sun. All right, so then we're going to talk a little bit about record keeping and what I do. So when I was first starting out, we were just doing weddings, and so we were just cutting. We didn't rubber band anything. We didn't keep track of anything that we cut. We just cut everything that we could or whatever we needed, and we got it in, right? Since I've been doing different kinds of outlets, like especially wholesale and going to market and doing CSA, it's important to me that I know how much I'm producing and how much I have in the cooler. And so keeping records of what we're cutting every week or every day is really important, because not only does it allow me to see how I'm doing that year, it allows me to predict what I'm going to have the next season so that I can say to my florists, yes, in June I'm going to have 10,000 snapdragon stems, no problem, you know, as long as something weird doesn't happen. Or I'm going to have, you know, 3,000 ranunculus stems a week from this planting. You know, it really helps me know what is the production that I'm getting. And it can also point out different issues that I'm having. Like, let's say, so this year I had terrible ranunculus year. And, you know, I can go back and I can look at my records and I can say, oh, we had like a 70% loss of stems in our ranunculus this year, you know, based on last year's numbers. And it can say, if I want to produce 20% more sunflowers next year, how many more beds do I need to plant? Or, you know, what do I need to do? So I think record keeping and for your specific farm is really, really important. You can look at other people's numbers, but you're not going to have the same numbers. It doesn't matter if she's your next door neighbor. You're not going to have the same numbers because you are doing different things. Your plants are doing different things. So this is what our harvest sheet looks like. It's a little hard to see. So what we have is the week number. So this was from week 25. The species that we're harvesting, the variety that we're harvesting, where is it? In my field, I break things up into different blocks. So I have blocks 1 through 10. And then how many bunches we harvest, how many stems in those bunches. Sometimes we'll harvest like dahlias, we harvest in a bunch of 5, sunflowers in a bunch of 5, gomphrena we harvest in a bunch of 20, but most things it's in a bunch of 10. So you can see, let's see, I can't see any of the numbers on here, so I'll just look at this. But for the ladies' mantle, we had a lot of that. Ladies' mantle was, this was its week. It was week 25. So I had ladies' mantle robustica in block 7, and we did 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 bunches of alchemilla, ladies' mantle. And I think those are 20 stem bunches. Oh, it's just a 10 stem. And we use hash marks because sometimes there's 2 people or 3 people working on the same bunch. So like, you just count what you're bringing back to the truck and you go 1, 2, 3 hash marks. We're not putting like numerals down generally unless you're the only person working on that. So then that becomes, surprise, a spreadsheet. And then I can look at the spreadsheet and I can turn that into a graph that shows me, okay, how am I doing over the season? So this was from this season. Up to week 32, it looks like. So from week 11, which was when we had some forced tulips in the greenhouse, we're getting into our peak season over here when I'm harvesting like 9,500 stems a week, and then sort of starting to taper off after that big July hump. So I want to show you this a little bit. So this is also in the master plan spreadsheet that I've shared with you guys already. And we're going to look at the harvest data 2023. Let me see here. Oh, yeah. We're going to make that bigger. Okay, so this is really easy. Here's our week number, 36. This is am I in week? I'm in week 39 now, right? But I think I only did this up to week 36 for you guys. That's when let's look at. Anyway, we can do this however we want to. I'm going to actually select all so we can see. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. So that's for that year. This year up to week 37 was 112,154 stems altogether, so 11,907 bunches. And then I have here like my location. So let's say I want to go through and look at, I only want to see what I grew in block 6. Okay, I grew 1,200 bunches in block 6, which is 12,332 stems. Great, cool. Then I can go over here. I have a little chart sheet, and I can look at, I better decrease this size for you. And I can look at, like, how was block 6 performing over time? Let me get this a little bit smaller. Okay, so this is starting in week 21, I'm seeing production out of block 6, and then peaking here in week 31, just like everything else in the field, down to week 36, and sort of seeing. And what did I have in block 6? So I had like a lot of zinnias, so that makes sense to me. And then I can sort of compare over the years, like how is block 6 doing versus block 5, etc. And we can use this kind of data to compare all kinds of things, right? So let's say I don't want to look at block 6. I just want to look at everything, and I want to look at just zinnias. So I'm going to go down and just select zinnias. Okay, I've harvested about 7,600 zinnia stems. Sorry, that's hard to see. And this is what my chart looks like for zinnias. Interesting, very interesting, right? So I've had about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks of harvest for my zinnias. They started week 30, and I started with 540 stems. I had a big bump the next week up to 1,800 stems, and then 1,800 stems again a couple weeks later, probably when my second succession started to come in.
I was going to say, is that your second succession and that flush comes
Yep.
back and it takes
Yep.
off?
Yep, so we can look at that and say, great, I want more even production, or I want more production later in the season, or what do I want that I can use this data to say, okay, this is what was going on, and that's another reason to take, you know, those good end of day notes like I've been talking about last night. Take those good end of day notes so that you can say, what was happening then? Why does this look weird? Or how do I want to improve this or change it for the next season, right? So this is really powerful, and this is actually really easy to do. You don't have to know formulas hardly at all for making this kind of data. You just need to take the data. So I think it's really powerful and valuable for you to actually write down what you're harvesting out of the field, and just do it in a way that's consistent and that makes sense so that you can analyze that data later. But doing it in the season, this is a gold mine for you as a farmer. It's going to help you so much to know what's productive and what isn't in your field. Okay. Does anybody do anything like this already? Is anybody keeping track? How are you doing that?
We do it with vegetables.
Right. Are you doing it like on a spreadsheet? Do you use a piece of paper?
We use a piece of paper, but Doug and Phil put it into a spreadsheet.
Okay, cool, cool. And then how do you use that in the winter or in the off season or whenever you use it?
For basically what we're going to do, like you said, what we're going to do the next year.
Right, cool.
And what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
What's selling, what's not selling.
Yeah.
Farmers market.
Mm-hmm. So you have sales data too?
Right.
Great, great. That's awesome. Yeah, so if you're also keeping track of your sales outlets, like, so I participate in the wholesale market called the Colorado Flowers Collective, and they, at the end of the year and every week, you know, they give us a report of what we sold. And so I can go back through that and I can say, okay, I offered, you know, because we'll offer, let's say, yellow Lisianthus and, you know, and white Lisianthus. They bought the white Lisianthus a lot more than they bought the yellow Lisianthus. So I know that I can sell more white Lisianthus. I can still sell yellow Lisianthus, and people are still going to want it, but maybe I don't need to, you know, buy two plug trays of it. Maybe I only need one. That kind of thing to help you make decisions. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear y'all are doing that. Anybody else doing any kind of record keeping on your harvests? Casually.
Very casual.
Yeah, cool, cool. Yeah, do you find it helpful?
I mean, I do, and we've probably kept bigger track of more like our sales. But this is more of a goal, like to be consistent, because my husband helps, my mom helps. There's a lot of fingers, and so I could be keeping track of it somewhat, but maybe not everybody. So something that would bring some unity to it, and like have a set SOP and standard would be very helpful.
This is really easy to teach people. You do have to remind them, because they're just like going along, you know, with their day. But you have to say like, oh hey, did you write that bunch down? You know, sometimes until they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's the habit, is like writing it down when I get to the bucket, right? Awesome. Okay, do you guys have any questions about all of that I just talked about? I'm going to get into a little bit of post-harvest handling, just show you what I do, and then we'll talk about pricing. But anything on the physical harvesting stuff first? Any questions or ideas? Okay. Great. So for me, post-harvest handling is about a couple of things. Number one, just sell it. Just get it out of your cooler. The best thing for post-harvest handling is just get it out of there, get it to your customer as fresh as you possibly can. Now, if you can't do that, because we have a lot of flowers coming in, right? Cooler at 36 degrees or as close as you can get. Mine's usually around 40 degrees, which is fine. We have a cool bot. I set it at 36 degrees. It just doesn't get that cold. But if you have a good compressor, you know, you can generally get it nice and cold. Now, some things don't like it that cold. Basil and zinnias don't like it that cold, especially if they come out of a 90-degree field. So you might have to have a different area. And you can just leave them in the shade in a structure somewhere. That can be fine for zinnias and basil. But they do, you know, they're just not as long lasting if you can't get them a little bit colder. Zinnias will do well at 50 degrees. but other flowers will last a lot longer colder. For me, this is what I use. I use a drop of bleach or a chlorine tablet in each bucket when it goes into the cooler. That's all I use. I've tried a lot of different kinds of holding solutions and sanitizers and stuff like that over the years, but for me, just keeping the bacteria down in the buckets can allow me to store those flowers for at least a week, if not longer, and it depends, of course, on the variety that you have. So like sunflowers are a really dirty stemmed flower in that they have lots of hairs up and down, and so that surface area invites bacteria, and they already have bacteria on them. And so the bacteria clogging up the stem is really the issue that you're going to have with your flowers wilting too early. So since you're in the cooler and you're probably not going in there and taking out every bunch and chopping off the ends with the bacteria in it every day, you know, you're going to want something that's just going to keep the bacteria down. So for me, bleach has worked really well for that. So just literally a drop of bleach. We actually have a spray bottle that's got 50% bleach, 50% water, and we just do a couple of squirts in the bucket when they come in. That's been the easiest way for me to get it in there. Yeah, go ahead, Taylor. Oh, she didn't have one. Okay. Good. She's stretching. She's already using the lessons.
Make a plant food or anything like that. We've used a mixture that has the bleach and the vinegar and sugar in it.
Sure.
I was just curious about that.
Yeah, there's absolutely other ways to do it. The things that generally you have in, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but generally what you have in a flower food or what you get in the little packets at the store, it's going to be a sanitizer, so it'll be something like bleach, some kind of biocide, an acidifier like vinegar, because flowers will take up acidic water better than they do alkaline water. And then sugar, because that is their food. And so that's what will help them be a little bit more vibrant when they come out of the cooler. So yes, you can absolutely do that. I've never done it really myself because I see good results with just doing this.
I'm curious if we could get, it would be less cost if
yeah.
we don't have to do this.
I find that just keeping the bucket and the water super clean is enough to get you great results. But you should experiment and see, like you're saying, okay, I think it's doing better with the sugar because I'm seeing more vibrancy in this bucket that I had the sugar in versus one that I just did bleach, you know. Okay, oops. First in, first out in your cooler. So FIFO, whatever, however you want to say that. That means that, you know, the first things that go into your cooler are the first things that come out. If you harvested sunflowers today and you harvested sunflowers tomorrow, the sunflowers you harvested today are the first ones you're going to put in bouquets. Then you're going to move on to those older flowers. This is hard. It's actually hard to do because I pack my cooler really tight, and sometimes there's too many flowers to go on the racks and they get on the floor and then you're all mixed up. But, you know, just the general principle, if you can try as hard as possible to do first in, first out, you're going to have better quality on everything, and you're going to have fewer flowers in the cooler that are sitting there like getting a little bit funky and affecting the other flowers in your cooler. So take out your old flowers. If there's something that's sitting in there and it's gross, just get it out of there. And then also clean your cooler as much as you can. So when there's petals or leaves or anything, broken flower heads on the floor in your cooler, they're decomposing, they're actually emitting gases like ethylene that can cause your other flowers to be like, oh, it's time to die. And they will start to senesce as well. No fruit or old vegetables in your cooler either. Fruit and vegetables are constantly just decomposing, you know, even when they look good, and they're giving off a gas called ethylene that can be really detrimental to the longevity of your flowers. First in, first out, this is the idea. So if you've got a cooler that's got 2 racks on the side, that's what I have. It goes, you know, I harvested on July 21st, July 23rd, the 25th, 28th. So these are all in there in order. And I'm going to pull out these 2 buckets first to make bouquets. And then these guys are going to come out. Okay, that's the idea. There's my cooler. Same thing that I just said. So, you know, hopefully these flowers are the oldest ones here on the side, and those at the back are the newest ones. But again, it can be challenging when you have like, you're like, oh, all of a sudden I have super tall bellflower that I've never had before, and they don't even fit on my racks. And so it's, you know, challenging to get those in there in the correct order. But just making it a priority and doing the best that you can to make sure you're using the oldest flowers first. So yeah, and then this is what I was just talking about. So flower food ingredients is a biocide, an acidifier, and a sugar. So you can make this yourself, but like I said, what I've found is just a drop of bleach works perfectly well for me. So Chrysal makes CBVN tablets, so these are great if you don't want to deal with bleach and you just want to use a little tab. You can just drop one of those tabs. I think it does a gallon. No, it's like in liters, so I can't remember how much it does, but just one of those for a bucket is fine. Drop of bleach, and then, you know, vinegar can be good too if you're like, if you don't want to use bleach for, you know, health reasons or for whatever reason. Vinegar on its own can be helpful. It is a little bit of a bactericide in that a lot of bacteria don't want to live in acidic environments, so it can work well as also. But there are just alternatives. There's a lot of other products out there too, so anything by that company, Chrysal, has been used in the floral industry for a long time. They have a thing that's called a holding solution. It's blue. I don't remember what the actual name of the product is, but that works well. It's just a little pump jug that you use. Yeah.
Does the bleach affect, like if I wanted to say I'm selling organic flowers, would that would totally affect that?
I think it does. Yeah, I think you're not allowed to use bleach in organic production, which is like just whatever to me. It's just so dumb. But there are other products that are organic certified that do the same thing. It's just they cost more. So it's really annoying. But yeah, so like something like Physan, I think I mentioned on the, yeah, this thing is, I'm pretty sure, on the organic approved list.
Does it matter? I mean, we use the cheap white vinegar, but does it matter what kind of vinegar?
I think cheap white vinegar is probably your best because if you use something like an apple cider, it probably has more organic matter in it. That's probably a little bit too sweet, actually, and might promote bacterial.
Does it have to be a certain like percentage of vinegar?
I think the higher the better, just because generally the more vinegar that you use, the better results you're going to get. That's been my client's experience anyway. So people in my CSA who just do vinegar, they have to use quite a bit of vinegar. So a higher concentration is going to be best, but I don't know the exact amount. Yeah. Okay, pricing. Now, I don't mean to make that face. It's just that there's a lot to it, right? There's a lot to it, and it can be kind of a struggle. And also, you know, it can be really empowering to say, this is my price, and I'm sticking to it, and there's reasons for my pricing, okay? Does anybody have any questions on the post-harvest handling before we get into this, though? Who's got, yeah, go ahead, Art.
What kind of water do you use in your buckets? Is it a well? Is it a treated water you use?
I do have a treated, so it's city water that we use. So it does already have like some chlorine in it. But if you have a well water, there's nothing wrong with that at all. What do you have?
Well, we have both.
Uh-huh.
We have it's a rural water, but it's treated water.
Yeah.
You know, so I was just curious because it's already treated, more bleach than that. I haven't found it necessary typically. Sure. But I wondered if that was a big issue with it already being chlorinated.
I don't think so. No, I think the chlorinated water, you know, it's not that much really that's in there, and I definitely have seen better.
On water specifically, just through being a florist. Floralife, which is a Smithers Oasis product, they will do a free water test for you.
Oh, nice.
And then give you some, but that's, as a florist, I'm not certain if a grower would have that same, but they do have some product that's like holding solution for growers too.
Would your, like, if you were in a hard water, because we are on rural water, and it's treated, it's pretty mineral heavy in Butte County.
And what they did was they gave me a specification, so I had a dosatron which would actually dose the amount of fluoropreservative and run it indirectly to my buckets. And so it was drawing out of it, and that would give me the dosing of what I would need, whether it's hard or soft water. Or vice versa. So that was kind of a nice little tool. And then you could use any of those chemicals, and you could maybe even kind of smudge it a little bit using the bleach as well as that for those calculations. But it certainly helped, and I noticed that as soon as I started using the Dosatron versus like powder and mixing it into the water and trying to get it to dissolve, it was so much more accurate, and that teamed with the correct holding temperature in my cooler, my length of holding flowers was, and my customers were saying, oh my gosh, they lasted a month. And I'm like, crap, I'm working myself out of business. But it was like, it really, the flower longevity was
Yeah. So I just want to say for the live stream that Jenny just mentioned that Floral Life, which is another floral preservative company, and they make the Oasis floral foam, they offer a free water test so that you can know what's best for your water and what product they can offer you. And she also mentioned what's called a dosatron, which is just a little machine that doses your water by gallon with the product so that you don't have to be mixing, and that can be a really useful thing. And I don't think it's terribly expensive.
It's not, and then it will last for years and years.
And they last for years and years.
15 years, and it actually never had any breakdown or problems. And it saved me so much money on the chemical usage that I was putting in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So definitely look into that. Anything else on that? Cool. Thanks so much for those questions and suggestions. That's awesome. Okay. So for me, I've got different goals when I'm pricing things, and different prices for different markets and different customers, right? So for me, what's going to lower my prices is that I want to sell as many flowers as possible, and also that I want to make flowers accessible to more people. I know that that's an important thing for a lot of you guys, and so we don't want to necessarily be looking at those populations that can afford really, really high-priced flowers. Those might not be the kind of people that you want to be serving. You might want to be serving, the community where you live. And then, what lifts your prices are going to be making a profit, covering your costs and more. And then don't undercut others in the industry. We want to value our local products. That's why it's been really nice for us to have a flower collective, because the prices are set by the collective, and so we all have like a nice baseline for what we should be charging, even for wholesale. So this is a balancing act, and I'm changing my prices all the time, generally upward, but sometimes downward, and I even, my bouquets at the farmer's market in the small town in the mountains sell for less than do my bouquets in the city at the big farmer's market, just because I can charge more at the bigger farmer's market, and because I want those mountain people to have nice flowers that they can afford. Okay, so here's some pricing resources that you guys should really check into if this is something that you're looking at and that you need to check out. So the ASCFG price guide, if you're not already a member of the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, check them out. It is, an more expensive membership per year, but it is really valuable. It's a really good organization. And yeah, I just encourage you to check them out. So that's on there if you are a member. I don't know if you can access that if you are not a member. But you can access the USDA Boston Ornamental Terminal reports. How exciting. Oh, you can't even see this. Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit of what's on here. So I'm going to go to, we always talk about sunflowers, so I'm going to look at what they've got for sunflowers. And I actually see... okay. Sunflowers, offerings light, bunched 5s, NJ long 650, PA long 650 to 750, mostly 650. So I'm pretty sure that NJ means New Jersey and PA means Pennsylvania, but I'm not positive. They have a lot of different country codes on here. So 650 to 750 for a 5-stem bunch of sunflowers. That's all right, you know, it's not great. I get $8.50, our flower collective charges $8.50, and then I get 75% of that, so whatever that ends up being. But it's over $1 a stem, so that's pretty good for sunflowers, I would say. And so there's a lot in here. There's going to be things that are not on this list because they don't ship and, you know, they're just not grown commonly. So you're going to have to find different resources for those. Great. So, and then your local markets are another important place to look. Let's see, I'm trying to get rid of this stuff. Oh God, I didn't do it. Have I done this wrong? I don't know what's going on. So, and then grocery stores and florists. Oh, I did want to show you Mayish Wholesale. So Mayish Wholesale is a online shop for higher-end florists. And so they're looking for higher-end florists, or you're looking for that. I would look at what they've got. So I've got, you have to make an account, but it's, you know, not a big deal. And it's just a good resource. So let's see what they have for sunflowers. Okay, they've got chocolate brown sunflowers. Oh, I have to log in. Dang it. Let's see. Go to regular. Oh crap, I'm not on my computer. What I was seeing last week was something in the area of, they do box lots, so it's a lot of flowers that the florists are having shipped to them, basically like straight from the airport. So I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a good price. It was a really good price for sunflowers. And so looking at those sites, where is your customer going to get flowers now? What are they paying for flowers now? You know, so finding that out from Mayish. Mayish is a good one. There's 50flowers.com, which is much higher price because they're generally selling to like a DIY bride. So those are going to be, you know, higher priced, and, you know, that would be like the upper end of what you're going to sell a bunch of flowers for. But then looking around in your area, so what is your grocery store selling bouquets for? What is your florist selling bouquets for? What about, you know, at the farmer's market, other farms, what do they have listed on their website? What can you go find? Yeah, and then at the farmer's market, how about roadside stands? If there's any farm stands around you, go and check them out and see what people are charging. And then on online stores, I just mentioned like 50 Flowers and Mayish. And then your local wholesaler. So I would definitely go and see, can you get the price list from your local wholesaler? Like, they're bringing in flowers from wherever, from California, from Florida, blah, blah, blah. Can you go in there and say, hey, you know, I just want an account. Maybe I need some supplementary flowers for a wedding that I'm going to do. And then you can see their price lists. You can go in there every week, get their sheet, or sometimes they post it online, and you can just check that out and say, cool, well, it seems like the price of sunflowers is somewhere between, you know, $6.50 and $8.50, depending on the season. So that's, you know, somewhere around what I can charge. Not to say that you can't charge more, because you are a local grower. You have higher costs because you're in America, and you are paying people, you know, and yourself a wage to live in this country. And, you know, so you might have higher costs, and you might adjust that up a little bit, and you definitely can. So some costs to consider when you are doing your pricing. Seeds and plants, trays, soil, compost, electricity and water. Don't forget those overhead costs. Fertilizers, pesticides, tools and supplies. Did you need to buy a new hoe? Did you buy a new high tunnel? What did you buy this year? And then your overhead, which is like, what does it cost you to actually do nothing, basically, is your overhead. Like, if you had, you know, no plants in the ground at all, how much money would you still be paying for your rent, your water, your bookkeeper, you know, etc. Those kind of things with your overhead. And then your infrastructure. So are you paying for water? Like, we have to pay for our ditch shares where I am. Do you have to pay, did you, you know, just put in a new high tunnel? Or what are you paying to maintain your irrigation system? Those kinds of things. And then the last one that's really big is your labor and time. Like, that's where, this is where all of your costs pretty much are. You know, that's pretty much where it's at, is how much time you're spending on things. Some things cost a lot more, you know, your utilities are going to be something to think about. Okay, so I want to go through this little exercise. This is more super fun math, so I am sorry if we're getting a little bit tired of me and my spreadsheets, but this is for Lisianthus. I'm going to go through it quickly because I just want you to get the concept down. This is an enterprise budget. Am I doing okay on time?
Yeah, you have 15 minutes.
Okay, thanks. This is an enterprise budget, which means how much am I bringing in with this crop and how much does it cost me to grow it? Okay, so we're going to do costs first. So this is for me, for Lisianthus for this year. And I'm just doing one tray just to see. So supplies and materials, I spent $76 plus $20 on shipping for a 210 tray. Let's say I have 90% of those plants survive to maturity. I got 189 plants. I spent, you know, if I'm getting 75 bunches, you'll see I got 75 bunches out of this tray. Spent 60 cents on rubber bands. Very important. Don't forget your rubber band costs. Netting, stakes, and fertilizer are going to be negligible for the amount of space that I have, but we could put in, you know, like 20 cents or something if we want to for like how much, you know, the plastic netting is no money at all for like 3,000 feet. So those are some of the materials that I put in. Overhead costs. Cooling, electricity, water, electricity, so like electricity for my pump, infrastructure, rent, insurance, taxes, fuel, etc. per square foot of my indoor growing space. I went through and calculated that, and it's about 44 cents per square foot per year, or about 4 cents per square foot per month. Okay, so if I've only got my Lisianthus in there for, well, let's say it's something else, like it's basil. I've only got the basil in there for 2 months. I don't actually have the full cost of 44 cents per square foot. Anyway, at 8 plants per square foot, that's how close I plant my Lissies. I need about 24 square feet for this tray, which will cost me $11 in overhead costs. Okay, so that's an important one. It will be in the hoop house for the whole season without another crop, so we'll use the full yearly rate. Okay, then I have labor costs. Planting is going to take me probably not a half hour for that tray, but we'll just say a half hour with 2 people is $20 because I'm paying $20 an hour. Netting, actually doing the netting of the crop is going to cost me $22.60. That's for the whole bed, not for this crop, this one tray, but whatever. Weeding, maybe I'll spend an hour weeding that one 24 square foot section, you know, over the course of the plant's life. Hand watering, 15 minutes total on that one little section times one person, because I do have to hand water our Lissies when they come in because they're little babies, and so they don't, like, they just don't, you know, get going until a couple of weeks. And then harvesting. Harvesting is probably going to cost me the most. So if I take 2 minutes per stem per bunch of Lisianthus to harvest, because I do have the netting on and sometimes they're crazy and it takes a little bit longer to get them. 75 bunches, 2 minutes per bunch, 150 minutes is $50. And then delivery. So I'm going to show you how we got to this number. But anyway, I'm going to have to do like 2 75 tenths, 2 3/4 deliveries to get all of these flowers down to my wholesale outlet. So that'll cost me $110 just to get them there. So my total is $325.20 in costs for growing this one tray of Lisianthus. Now, what can I make? If I get 4 stems per plant, because I pinched it, and I've got 189 plants, then I'm going to get about 75 bunches from these plants. Okay, might get a little bit more. Some of those Lissies will give you 5 or 6 stems. So, but 4 I felt like was a good conservative estimate. At a wholesale price of $14.50 per bunch, which is what I get. So at the collective, they sell them for $19 a bunch. For at least for like the more common varieties, they'll sell like the Roseanne Browns and stuff for $25 a bunch. Then I'm going to earn about $1,087 from this tray. At a retail price of $19 a bunch, we can make $14.25. So what's my profit margin? Does it make sense for me to be growing this Lisianthus? obviously from what we looked at, yes, it pretty much does make sense, but we can see, so thinking about this, our gross profit margin is our revenue, so that was like our 1450 number, minus the cost, which was like our 325 number, divided by the revenue. That's going to give us a percentage of, you know, how much profit am I making. Cool. So the net income for wholesale is going to be $762. So that's just my revenue minus my costs, and then I'm dividing that by the revenue. So that's a 70% profit margin on my lissies. Freaking awesome! So great. For the income retail, that's my 7%. Freaking also awesome, but noticeably, like, not so much more at retail than at wholesale. That's why I'm really like moving a lot of my business over to wholesale, because it's just so much less work. Because if I, you know, what I didn't factor into the retail was like, how am I selling those? Because then I'm taking them to market, I'm putting them in bouquets, I've got materials like sleeves and stuff, I've got gas to go to market, I've got market fees, so all of those things. So in fact, my guess is that the lissies that I sell at retail would be a similar profit margin to the wholesale ones.
And do you find if you're doing wholesale, then you don't have any waste, there's no shrinkage?
Oh, it's so nice. Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's times when, you know, because we pre-sell a lot of our flowers to the wholesale collective. So the florists have already bought them, but then I will also send extras so that they can have things at the market and stuff, and sometimes those don't sell, but usually they do, you know, so it's better for me to send it and have it get sold than to have it sit in my cooler, or to send it and have it not get sold, you know, whatever. So yeah, not so bad. Usually 5% on a profit margin, a gross profit margin is considered healthy. There's different definitions of profit margin. So, you know, you can look at profit margin in different ways and have different formulas for it. But, you know, the gross profit margin is just a good, quick and dirty way to get an idea. Now, doing this for every single crop is really difficult, and you don't have to do it. What you can do is look at, you know, sort of those bigger costs. It's like, all right, I can make, you know, go back and look at your records and say, okay, I made this much from my lissies this year. Usually I get granular enough to say like how much I made from a single cell or a single tray. And I can't necessarily say like how much I made from one planting versus another. Like that's pretty difficult for me to tease out, is like if I had my first zinnias come in and then my second ones come in, like it might be hard for me to tease out how much I actually made like per plant. And a lot of the time we just don't have good data about how many stems we're getting per plant. Like that's always been a struggle for me, because for me to go and like count from a representative sample, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just not gonna do it, you know? The only time I ever really know is if I have a plant in the ground that's, you know, got one flower per seed, like a sunflower, then I know. Or if like lissies or ranunculus, sometimes you can just look down and you say, oh, on this one plant, like I cut 4 stems off of it already. I'm gonna get another 2, so I get 6 stems. The snapdragons can be the same way. But it's challenging to get those. That's a research project. How many stems per plant? I wanna know. Okay. So just moving on real quickly, this is what I'm charging right now in my market. So, you know, and you can charge more than me probably. I do lower my prices, or like I've kept them low. I don't lower them, but I have kept them low. So a large bouquet for our flower share members or at the farm stand is $30 each, or $360 for the season. Farmers market is $40 at the big city. A medium bouquet that I sell at my local nursery, which is like a 20 stem bouquet, I'm getting $14 for that. A small bouquet in the bottle I sell at the farm stand, $10. Grower's bunch, so that can be something, just whatever we have in abundance. That can be like lizzies or sunflowers or something. I'm usually selling for $12 to $20. It really depends on what it is. Sunflowers, $12. Medium bouquet, I talked with a Whole Foods representative recently, and they quoted, you know, for something similar, like a 20 stem bouquet, 14 bucks that, or sorry, 12 bucks that we would get for that. And you know, if you're doing Whole Foods, you're probably doing 100, 200 bouquets a week. So it's a good way to be getting rid of flowers. But those are just some examples of pricing. And then I have this for you guys, which is a wholesale price list from this season at the Collective. So a bunch of different things, like what did I get for agrostemma? $12 a bunch, so my take home for that was $9 per bunch. And so this price per bunch is like, what can you sell it directly to a florist for? So the florists are buying at that price, $12, and then I'm selling it to the Collective at $9, or that's what I'm getting from that sale, because they take the 70 or the 25% fee. So, and then all of this is in here. If this is helpful to you, you know, please go through and use these prices, and also take into account your costs and what your region, you know, what you can charge in your region. A couple more slides. No, just that. And then I've got, I think I have some resources. Well, I have resources on the first presentation from today. So we got a little bit of time. How much time do we have?
Whenever lunch arrives. So
oh, great.
Until they walk in the door with food, so.
And then I won't be able to talk anymore because you'll all run away.
Oh, okay. Oh, so we got 10 minutes.
Great. So we talked about a lot of things. We talked about harvest efficiency. We talked about, thank you. We talked about our post-harvest handling, which there's a lot more to that. If you have more questions about it, let me know. There's like particularities around different flowers. And then we talked about pricing. So, so yeah, come at me.
Somebody asked about what stage to harvest sunflowers. Say,
yeah.
Do you want them just cracking? Do you want them showing some color, some certain size? And then grading those things. Are they graded as far as large, medium, or small sunflowers? Do you grade them at the farm?
Yeah. That's something that I've never gotten into is grading. So Jenny's question was about sunflowers and the stage of harvest for those, and then about grading them. So I think mainly, you know, for our wholesale, we do that in an informal way. We definitely like put together bigger flowers versus smaller flowers, and then we'll add more smaller flowers to a sunflower bunch than to, you know, we'll do 5 stems in a big sunflower bunch and more like 7 or 8 in a smaller, you know, if they're smaller heads. And I do like to grow the smaller heads of sunflowers, so which means that all it means is I plant the sunflowers closer together, and then they give me a smaller stem and a smaller head. Because I like to use them in bouquets, and I can't, you know, if you got a sunflower that's this big as your whole bouquet, it's, you know, not much fun. I mean, it's fun, but, and then for me, what I do for sunflowers is as close as possible. I do want like a couple of petals lifting off the face of the sunflower, and that's when I know it's time to harvest it, because all the rest of those petals are going to come up real soon, and they're all developed. If your sunflower is, you know, at this stage, all the petals are out and they're poking out, that's a good stage too. You know, once they get right here and they're all flat, it's not going to last very long. People will still buy them. People don't know. They don't know. But they're not going to last very long. And then you're making not such a great name for yourself when your flowers don't last very long. The other important thing, and in general, for all flowers when we're harvesting and you know, the harvest stage, is that we want to not see the anthers. We don't want to see the signs that that flower is sexually producing, because what that means is that it's done its job. Like, what is the point of a flower? The point of a flower is to reproduce. Like, it's not here because it's pretty. It's not here, you know, it's not what the point of a flower is. The point of the flower is to make seeds and reproduce, right? So it's attracting its pollinators. That's what it wants to do. That's the whole idea of it. One of the reasons that some of the growers that you're getting like wholesale flowers from, those flowers might look really good because they're inside. They're totally isolated from any insect activity and any pollinator activity. And what that means is that all of the little florets, like let's say on a snapdragon, those haven't been pollinated by a bee or a wasp or fly or anything. They haven't been pollinated, which means that they're staying on the stem for a lot longer. Because once they've been pollinated, it's time for them to senesce and start making seeds, okay? So when we're outdoor growing, we have to be pretty good at seeing when is this flower at the right stage of harvest and it's not gonna start to senesce. It looks really good and it's gonna continue to grow a little bit. But you have to be aware that, those pollinators are out there. We want pollinators on our farm. It's a good thing. It's awesome. I have bees, we have bees on our farm. But a lot of the growing that happens for commercial cut flowers happens inside in very isolated greenhouses, in part because there's no pollinators in there. And so on a snapdragon stem, you're gonna see, the column of flowers can be this tall, because it continues to bloom up the stem. And these flowers down at the bottom, they're not getting pollinated, so they're not senescing and falling off. So that's a big difference. You'll see that if you grow snapdragons in a hoop house or anything else that, and you've got an enclosed hoop house with like mesh on the side or something that excludes insects, you'll see the difference in your snapdragons and anything else that, has sort of that longer bloom period that blooms from the bottom up. So for sunflowers, the thing that's important, even if the petals are like this and you're like, oh, that still looks pretty good, what you'll see on the inside is a ring of the actual flowers of the sunflower on the face, right? So they're actually tiny little flowers. That's where all the little seeds come from. And so this ring around here will start putting out little anthers. So they're little yellow feelers, kind of, that come out, and they have the pollen on them. And so once those start coming out, then the pollinators are going to start coming, and then basically the point of the sunflower, it has done its job. And so it's going to start losing those external ray petals, and they're just not going to be, they're not going to last long for your customer. So even if the sunflower looks pretty good, if it's starting to get fuzz on the middle, on the face, then it's, I wouldn't cut it. I would just leave it for the bees at that point. Does that make sense? Okay. What else?
Helen, you just mentioned leaving it for the bees. Do you ever find that you do clean up and cut some of those things so that you're getting more flushes?
Do I ever deadhead, basically, I guess would be the term. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm pretty sure the bees on my farm are fine. Like, they're getting a lot of food. But for something like a sunflower, I guess I was thinking about them because, if I just leave it there, it doesn't matter to me that, I'm not going to get another flush off a single stem sunflower. But yeah, if you've got zinnias out there, for example, that, you're like, oh, well, that one's ugly, I'm not going to harvest that, or it, got eaten by a grasshopper or something. We're going in, I would say, every couple of weeks and doing deadheading on those crops that we want to continue to have flushes off of. So like your zinnias or your snapdragons or cosmos, things like that, that you can take off, and you can see that there are more buds coming up on those plants. It's good to take off the heads, because what's the plant doing? It's been pollinated. It's starting to make seed, and so it's actually putting way more energy into making seed than it is into making flowers, right? So if we want to keep our cut and come agains cutting and coming again, then we have to deadhead those so that the plant's not putting energy into seeds anymore and is putting it back into more flowers, so that we can continue to trick it into thinking that it's going to reproduce, right? Very tricksy.
I know last night you talked mostly about annuals, perennials. Can you tell us just a little bit about some of the perennials that you are finding that have the best profit margin for you, and what might be a good suggestion for some?
Great. Yes, thanks for that question. Questions about what kind of perennials am I seeing and growing that are doing well and having good profits for me. So this is going to be surprising, but the best thing that I'm growing is grass. So I have sea oats, northern sea oats. They're this really beautiful grass, perennial grass. They're 4 feet tall. They have these little dangly doodads, little oats on them, and they are freaking gorgeous. I sell every single stem. It is so productive. I also have something called Korean feather grass. It took it 2 years to flower, but it is flowering in abundance. I'm selling every single stem. And you know, the great thing about perennials is that you don't have to invest in them after that first year, and they just keep giving and giving and getting better and better. You do have to remember to take care of them. You know, they do still want some fertilizer in the fall, probably in the spring. So the grasses are really great. Let me think of what else I've got out there. So the perennial scabiosas are a really nice one. A lot of florists really like those flat Scabiosa caucasica. Those are a really fantastic, very prolific bloomer. Echinacea is a great one for, especially for our climate. It's a nice prairie flower, really good, really beautiful. You can dry it, it's awesome. I started doing some hypericum, so like a hypericum berry, and that's been a lot of fun, and it gives me flushes, which is awesome, so I'm doing it year over year. Veronica is a fantastic perennial. You know, if you get those Skylar varieties from Farmer Bailey, they're really nice and tall, and yeah, just really productive and gorgeous, and you know, you could probably get a couple of flushes off of them. Let's see, Veronica. I have my peonies, so I'm on my 3rd season on our farm. So next year will be the first year that we're harvesting our peonies. I have 700 of them, I think, and they did a really big, beautiful bloom this year, and it was like the only year that they're going to be out there all bloomed out. It was great. So I'm looking forward to the peonies. They're definitely going to be profitable for us, and as long as you have, I mean, you can sell peonies. You don't even have to try. Just go out there on the street corner. You can sell peonies. Yeah. I do not do roses. Great question. I've just not had good success with them in the past. But even if you have a couple of good rose shrubs, I think they're worth growing just because having even 1 or 2 blooms for some special events can be really valuable. Then the buds too.
Yeah, I have some like, they're over 100 years old, or
Oh,
150-year-old. They're a tuber rose, but they're heavily, heavily scented. I'd like their stem to be better, but
Sure.
I use them frequently.
Yeah.
But I was curious if anybody here.
Is anyone
much
growing roses?
I have a couple of different
Yeah.
roses, but.
Yeah, I have heritage roses because
Okay.
roses typically don't like me, except unless they're yellow shrubs. So I figured if I got the hold ones, especially by the guy in Iowa, Gilbert, can't think of his name right now. He grew his out in the field with no protection. So I figure if he can do it, I can do it, and they'll live. So far they're doing good.
That's
and I just got
awesome.
some more from Rogue Roses. Rogue Valley Roses is really good. High Country Roses in
Okay.
Colorado.
High country
That's
roses.
interesting.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot of the heritage one. I mean, if they've been around that long,
Right.
they gotta be hardy.
Curious
So.
if anybody like up Northway is growing anything like that, if that's even worth.
You
the
know,
time,
I
because
think
some of
I think that
different.
like anything, it's totally worth trying. Like perennials are just awesome, and if they work out, they work out. You know, and then if they don't, great, take it out, put something else in, just give it a try.
The garden roses, which you're not gonna get from wholesalers.
Right.
The ones with the wraparound petals,
Mhm.
the 4-quarter petite ones. I've seen them used in weddings, and my niece used one, and I'm trying to replicate her wedding bouquet in pressed flowers. And do you think I can get my hands on that purple one? I cannot find it. I'm close. I might have it, but I've tried to buy it too, but I'm not that fast at growing it. Iris.
Iris,
I'm in the
absolutely.
historic iris thing, so I have 800 varieties of iris.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah, I fertilized them. They're in crappy dirt because iris just like crappy dirt. I don't want them to grow that fast. I don't have time to divide them. I got a lot of rock. So I put them in crappy dirt. Well, I fertilized them. Remember, you look for it? I didn't even know you could.
Yeah.
So I used them, but I got too much nitrogen. half the bloom this year. I was so mad. First year I could sell my iris, and I got half the bloom. So then I put alfalfa meal in there for $1 a piece.
Oh man, bummer.
So, you know, I should just left them alone.
Yeah.
But you cut those before they open at all, just like a peony, but even faster.
Yeah.
They are tight bud, and you can lay them down in your fridge, good to go.
Yeah.
And take them in. The only hard part is the florist doesn't know what they look like.
It's true.
So,
yeah, that's been my experience with iris. So I have a nice row of them, and I'm like, I don't even know what they look like, you know, quite yet. So, so I just like will cut one and bring it inside and warm it up and let it open, and I'll be like, this is what it looks like, you know.
They will hold in a cooler, lay down flat out of water for a long time.
So just for the recording, we're talking about iris and saying, you know, you can cut them in bud, really tight bud, and then lay them flat in your cooler. They don't need water. You can store them dry, and they'll store. What do you think, a month without water?
I probably never made it that long, but I know they went a good couple weeks.
Good couple weeks in the cooler, and then you just cut the stem and rehydrate them. Yeah.
And it was same day or 24
Oh
hours.
yeah. Yeah,
Mine were out.
and florists really like them for events. I mean, they're really special. They really add something, you know, cool. So, and yeah, they're pretty darn easy to grow, as long as you abuse them a little bit, right? Yeah.
But abuse mine a lot.
That's the thing, being as a florist, some of these specialty crops that, like irises and unusual colored irises or peonies, things that don't ship well. I mean, I had a bride come in and she, I really want Lily of the Valley. Well, it's available 2 weeks out of the year, and nobody ships it. You know, you just don't ship it. Dahlias even are really hard to ship. So if you can offer those to your local florists, that you're bringing it in water, you know, and it's not going to be shattered, or it can be picked a little bit earlier. There's a specialty thing, you can charge a premium price for that, and they'll pay because they just can't get it.
Absolutely, especially dahlias and zinnias, folks.
Flopped over, they look like they're dead. They're like, what are these? I'm like, put them in the cooler.
Just give them a minute.
Put them in water. And they're like, okay. And I said, so what do you guys like the color? This one's really cool. She said, they're in bouquets out the door. We don't see them bloom either. I'm like,
I guess that's true.
Kind of hard.
Yeah. So another thing that, you know, about harvest stage for something like a tulip. So if you ever have tried tulips or doing bulbs, it's really pretty simple. I mean, what we've been doing is just in a raised bed. So it's a temporary raised bed. It's literally telephone poles that we put on the ground. And then we put the bulbs on just right on the ground. We're not doing any, you know, tillage to get them in there. And then we just cover those with a big thick layer of compost. So inside of this raised bed. And then the best thing is that in the spring, they're really easy to pull the whole bulb out with the rest of the stem. And then you've got the bulb on, and they last for at least a month in the cooler, like that. And you're harvesting them when you're just starting to see color on the edges of the petals. And yeah, it's just great. It's worked really, really well for us. And then we can hold those, like I said, in the cooler for about a month before they're, you know, going to open too fast and blow out. So.
When you're storing them in the cooler, are they dry? There's no water.
You can store them dry. I think people who do that will actually cut the bulb off, and then store them dry, and then they're like literally a wet noodle. And then you have to rehydrate them to get them, and you have to like wrap them in some newspaper or something so they're rehydrating straight up. But I keep the bulb on, and then they stay hydrated, and I put them in like this much water in the bottom of the bucket, and they stay hydrated, and then I can use them, you know, without having to rehydrate them. But
and then those bulbs are lost, and you just get new ones in.
Yeah. So yeah, we get new bulbs every year. You know, if you have tulip varieties that have perennialized well for you, that's awesome. I just treat mine like annuals because I want to reuse that bed because I'm planting so many. Yeah.
What's yours, Helen?
5A. Or sorry, 5B.
Okay, 'cause I was going to ask, do you have issues with it being above ground like that?
Yes.
With loss on those poles?
Yes. But that's what the big telephone pole really helps. It's a really nice thick pole. Now, and then my father-in-law, he was like, I don't know about this. I don't know. I think they're gonna freeze. Yeah, I think they're gonna freeze. And the bed that I just had, like, you know, 2x4s on or whatever I built it out of, That one I did have losses from freezing and from voles. So, you know, there's ways around that. And so one of the things that he said was like, just pack it with leaves, you know, just like put lots and lots of leaf insulation over and around the edges. And that's what he does with his bulb pots. So he plants a lot of bulb pots for sale in the spring. So they plant the bulbs, they put the pots in the corner, just dump lots of leaves on them. And they're super nice and insulated over the winter, and no loss from frost. But that can be an issue with the above ground stuff.
East River friends, we should maybe toy around with this. I love this idea, but maybe don't put like that 10,000 bulbs out.
Yeah, give it a try first. Give it a try.
I'm gonna have to do a trial around this. I love that idea though.
Yeah.
I was curious about the tulip bulbs too. Like if you have a huge, like for us when we grew them we grew a lot of the botanic garden, and the variability of like when they came up and bloomed was like a month.
Yeah.
Like, Does that become like an issue for you supplying it to, or does it, or?
Not really. I mean, people, I was able to sell all of the tulips, you know, I do, so because of that, there are different classes. So there's, you know, early, mid, and late tulips. So, you know, if you can plant things that are in, let's say you want a white from each of those classes, right? So let's say I want to plant an early white like Mondial, a mid white like Hakoon, and then a late white like Mount Tacoma. So those will give me white all the way through my tulip season. And then you can choose, you know, if you want a nice long tulip season. First of all, you can actually force your tulips a little bit in the field if you build a little low tunnel over them with plastic. So you can have one bed that's for forcing, and they'll bloom probably 2 to 3 weeks probably before those first ones in your other bed will, in your uncovered bed. And then also, yeah, just choosing varieties from the different classes, like early, mid, and late would be a good idea. So because you can hold them in the cooler for so long, you know, you can hold on to things that you need for a particular event, if that's what you mean. Maybe I don't understand exactly what you mean.
I just was curious because I wanted to grow tulips, and I was just like, boy, it's so unpredictable. Because we would always grow the same Darwin hybrids, and they were
kind of all mid-season. But they would, yeah, I'd have a picture of them blooming or emerging one year, an entire month different than the next year.
I see, yeah.
And so I didn't know if that would, if people expected them at a certain time, or I don't know.
I see, yeah, definitely the variability in the climate can really affect them. So yeah, absolutely up to a month of difference on a cold year versus a warm year. So yeah, I mean, that's just how it is in the spring, you know. It's just even with our collective clients, we have to go and they'll be like, when are the tulips coming? When are the tulips coming? And we're like, it's not time yet. It's been a cold spring. Sorry, you have to wait. That's how it is.
Something weird though, and it affected a lot of our perennials and even other stuff. Just 50 years ago, and even my dad, he planted rhizomal alfalfa in the fall, but then we had those warm winter days where it was 50. Do you remember that? And stuff sprouted, and then we surprised winters back, and it killed our alfalfa and some of our other stuff. I planted a whole bunch of bulbs. I think that's what
that can be a huge
We had a big spring.
Yeah, we had trees with bud freeze, and the top of your tree would have been gone.
Same thing.
Yeah.
We've had some really funky, weird weather stuff, at least in the Black Hills area.
You know, that's okay though, because you're farmers and you have tough skin, and you're gonna whatever, chuck it in the F-it bucket, you know? And you can just move on. You can just move on with your life and try it again, or don't. Just be like, I'm not doing that again. It hurts too much. All right, let's have some lunch.